Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Homemakers Radio, and I hope you get a few things done while you listen. I'm Mrs. Sherman, and in your circumstances today or wherever you live, I would like to encourage you to make great plans for its improvement or even your own improvement. And ladies, today I've just jotted down a few things I'd like to talk about while you work at home. And there are some other links I can give you of people who are doing videos like this for ladies at home. I love to watch videos of people doing things, but then I have to stop and look, and that takes up a lot of my time. Now, of course, you know the first thing that you have to do, kids, when you come here is get ready, get dressed, look your best. I'm trying to look my best for you. I waited till the evening so that I could have everything done and everything off of my mind. I'm staying up a little later. It's past my Jane Austen bedtime. I have been doing the Jane Austen diet section on light, and Brian Kozlowski had such a good chapter on how at night they tried to be in bed. Now some people think that they stayed up late for parties and dances and they went home in the dark. A lot of other people think no, they didn't, but I don't do anything in the dark anymore unless I read, and I've been going to bed very, very early sometimes just so I can read. And if I figured out that as a vital person, if I went to bed really early, no one would want anything. No one would ask me to do anything. And I couldn't start any projects or do any work. So I have been going to bed very early. And tonight I didn't, because I wanted to talk to you for a little while. And if it's in the morning for you, then I would encourage you to get dressed and get ready for the day. I've done my best for you, and you need to do your best for yourself and for your family. It is such a beautiful job, and it's worth wearing your best. And even look at me, I'm wearing a sparkly sweater because it's just going to sit in that drawer, and I'm not going to go to anywhere special, so it has to be done here. And I'll get out my favorite teacup that goes with it and do some secret sipping somewhere. Our weather is supposed to be turning very cold, and now I'm getting a lot of texts from all my descendants saying, oh, you better go out and get this and get that because there's going to be an ice storm. I just can't seem to panic, and I don't know why. I grew up on a homestead in Alaska and was used to being isolated, was used to being snowed in, was used to being, counting the products in your cabinet and all, trying to figure out how you're going to divide them up between the next few days before the thaw came. And I was used to it. It was kind of a challenge. But I don't drive at night anymore, and I don't think you should drive at night either. I don't think even you young kids should be driving at night at all. And so I'm not going to panic and run to the store. I'm going to wait till daylight, see how it's going, and check everything out in my pantry and see if I really need to go. And so today, then, my next subject, besides you getting yourself ready, is, and by the way, I'm in the empty guest room, which stays empty all winter here because no one comes. And we don't encourage them to, because we sure don't want them driving over those dangerous passes in the winter just to get here. And so I'm in this room. This is where I'm going to broadcast, and I know I have the light in the wrong direction, but at least you can hear me. Now, I talked to you last time about how I was going to maybe give some hints about how to cut back when maybe there are a few days left before your next paycheck, you're running out of things, and you don't like the money to be so low. So I have some suggestions to make that I've experimented with on myself, because I'm a scientist. And so let's start by cutting everything in half, using everything twice as long, and being they used to say in the olden days, modest about the length of time you talk, the length of time you do things, the amount of expenditures you have. So we'll cut back on the goods and the services and the products and the use of things that you have to renew, and also of disposable things. So I'll just start with paper towels and napkins, and I don't have anything to illustrate to you here, but I thought you might enjoy this, and that is, unless you can get the little cocktail napkins that are very small, serviettes we used to call them, paper, if you can't get those to use at the table, you take your regular napkin, which is actually quite large, and you cut it in half. Because if you'll notice, no one actually uses those napkins fully, and you can cut it in half. And I have a big stack of them. I've just cut them in half just because, and I'm not saying do this all the time, but just for the times when you can see there's going to be a bit of a shortage by the end of a paycheck or the end of the month or within the next few days, is you just cut everything in half, and you also lengthen the time of certain things. So let me just start with the napkins. No one knows any difference. They just aren't, four layers anymore. They're just two. No one knows a bit of difference. And so you can cut that in half. And the use of paper towels, we all like to have those, but you can cut those in half. You can buy rolls now that have cut them already into fourths, which is nice. They are a bit more expensive, but you can also not use them and remember we used to have the older worn out towels we would cut into squares and use those for rags. And of course they were washable and renewable. So you don't have to use paper towels, and I've cut down quite a bit on them, except when something is very greasy, it has butter on it or something. I like to wipe it off before I put it in the dishwasher or to hand wash. And so that is helpful too, to see how long you can have a roll of paper towels. Now they're not particularly expensive, but I'm just going to show you how to cut everything in half. And the coffee filters, if you've got coffee drinkers in your home and you just drink coffee, I'll just show you here. Okay, I'll show you what I've got here. This is what I have. I ordered these online, and they're just little dispensers, and you'd set them over the cup. Let me get a cup here. You set them over a cup. You put your coffee in this filter, and the filter, I like them because they're natural, and it doesn't alter the flavor of the coffee for whoever drinks coffee in your family. And then you just tuck them inside of this little dispenser, and you put your tablespoon or teaspoon of coffee in it, and then you pour hot water over it, and you get to look here to see if it's dripping. And what I've been doing with these is I've been using them a lot longer. A lot of people will use them once and throw them out, and you can put the coffee filter and all in your own garden if it's from one of these natural ones. I have just been using them to see how long they would last, day after day, for the one who drinks coffee. And I can get them to last quite a bit of time, maybe more than twice as long. And sometimes they'll actually dry out, and you can dump out your used coffee and use them again. And a lot of people say, well, why bother? They're disposable and everything. But it's an expense. When you combine the paper towels, the napkins, and the coffee filters, and you're reaching the end of a pay period or something, sometime you might need to do that. When you see that your funds are lower, you might need to say, okay, now's time to lengthen everything, or cut everything in half, or lengthen the time that I use something. And so then the other thing I noticed, I was in the kitchen the other day cleaning the fridge and noticing things that I had, and if I had had some grated cheese in a bag, I would have brought it here for you. And I began to think about how important it is to buy yourself a little block of cheese and grate it yourself and put it in one of those little Ziploc bags or a little dish and put it back in your fridge. Because when you buy the pre-grated cheese, you're paying a little extra, plus they have added cornstarch and mold inhibitors to that package of loose cheese. And you don't need all that. I'm not sure what effect that would have on anyone's health, but we don't need to do that. And you can grate your own cheese. Just those little hand graters, old-fashioned ones that Grandma had, you can still get those. And grate a tiny block of cheese and put it in a dish, put a lid on it, and put it in the fridge. And that prevents so much money going out. And so if you have to buy things that are prepared, get the pre-sliced cheese. But as far as grated cheese, and we all want that because you can sprinkle it on things, you can make your own. Some of you have wonderful Cuisinart machines that can do all that. So it shouldn't be too hard to do, and it shouldn't be too inconvenient. And the other thing is to stop going anywhere for the next few days and save that gas in the car. Just cut down on going. And of course, when we go out, we are going to spend. And so just don't go for a while. And these are for people that, I'm not saying to put your children under any hardship or anything like that, but also try eating half. I said, let's cut everything in half. Try eating half. For those of you who like eggs and bacon and toast for breakfast, all right, try 1 egg, 1 rasher of bacon, and 1 piece of toast or half a piece of toast. And just try cutting everything in half. And when Mr. S and I are here alone, we share an apple, we share a banana, we share an orange. We don't have a whole one ourselves. And I don't know why we think that we're saving money, but we're not at least letting so much go out. That's my big thing, is don't let so much money go out. And the other thing is to wear things twice as long before you have to launder them, or learn to spot clean so you don't have to launder everything. And take I had a bottle I brought here one day, a spray bottle, and how you could fill it half full with your dishwashing liquid and then add water to the top, and you can make that last twice as long. Now, a bottle of Dawn or Palmolive or some other liquid detergent for the dishes at the Dollar Tree is $1.25. And you think, what's $1.25? Why should I water it down? But we really don't need soap that thick. It's very caustic, and it's really quite effective. Putting it in the spray bottle, spraying your plate, and washing it. And if you're washing by hand, there'll always be a hand wash, but you can also do that to your hand washing liquid soap in the bathroom. You can add water to the pump soap or make a spray. I know some people have one that they make a spray out of their hand washing liquid soap and add a little drop of peppermint essential oil or something like that. And that makes a lot of sense, because you're not running. You think, well, dollar store is only $1.25, but you're not always running to the dollar store, and you're not spending $1.25. And when you start adding up, already I've mentioned about enough things that you get at the dollar store that if you cut them in half, if you cut the product in half or dilute it, I've already mentioned at least $10 worth of things from the Dollar Tree. And okay, so let's go on to other things, and that is keep your bedding and sheets clean by airing them out, part of the day, and cut down on the amount of electricity you use, to do the laundry, and also keep lights out. We always automatically did this in the olden days. We just kept the lights out if we weren't using them. And I'm doing the Jane Austen thing, so I have the candles, although I use the LED lights, battery-operated candles, and enjoying that, because I think that there's a noise connected to overhead lights and to electric lamps and everything electric. I think there's a noise, a buzz that goes on in my ears, and I notice when all that's off, it's so much quieter in my head too, in the atmosphere and in my head. And I have my I'll just reach over here and get this one. I have these And what they have 2 batteries in them. And what they are timed lights that doesn't show where the timer is or anything, but once you get the batteries in there, they'll go for a certain amount of hours and then they'll shut off. And so I've got these all over the house. And you unscrew the top and put the batteries in. And other things, I'm sure you can think of lots of things. Keep the doors closed and the windows closed to keep your heat in or your air conditioning in, and there's just all kinds of things up. Those kettles that I told you about, they're automatic shut off. Everybody's got 1 or 2, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And you don't have to reheat them every time. Just put your hand on it and feel if that water's still hot, and you can use that. You can pour that water in a thermos once it's hot and save it so you don't have to reheat it. And of course, everybody knows that you can repair things. Just a tiny knowledge of sewing, like how to thread a needle and tie a knot and sew a button back on, or mend a little tear in something, can prevent the money from going out. It won't save any money, but it'll prevent money from going out. And that is a big challenge because people are always telling you, oh, you could save money if you did this, or save money. I want to know where that is. Where's that money I saved? You said I saved by buying this bargain or something. So anyway, I just say you want to keep your income from going out. Keep it in. And these are just little things you don't have to always do, but you can do it. You don't have to force it on the rest of the family, but you can do it. You can cut what you eat and drink in half. You can use your tea bag nearly all day long, depending on how strong you make your tea. And you can make your own hot chocolate mixes with real cocoa powder and other ingredients. You don't have to buy things pre-made, because there's where the cost is, the packaging and of course the mix, and you can make your own. There used to be a book out called Make a Mix, cookery book or something like that. Oh man, that was way back in the 1980s. 1980s seemed modern to me when I was in them. Now they're ancient, but at the time they just seemed so modern, and that was when some of these interesting cookbooks came out. And so that's about, I'm sure there is much more. Another thing is cut down on the time. You cut your time in half by not spending so much time doing something. Like, for example, instead of sweeping every day, and it does wear the broom out too on these wood floors, just sweep every few days or every week. You don't have to sweep every day, and cut down on your own energy. Cut down on using your own energy. Also, cut down on your talking, cut down on your texting. Just cut down on a lot of things. One of the things that I had to quit doing was, we have a mailbox at the end of the road, and if the mail has come, the flag will be down, because if I've had something in there, they take it and put the flag down, and then I know that they've come. But if I don't have any mail in there, I have no clue whether they've put something in there or not. So I run down that road several times a day. And then I was wondering, what happened to all my time? Why can't I do all the other stuff I want? And I realized I was running up and down that road a little more often. So cut everything in half, and cut the time you use in half, and cut the worry you use in half, and the anxiety that you use. Just cut it in half. I don't know how you'll do it. You'll have to use your imagination. So I also wanted to read a little bit about from this book that I've been talking to you about. And there has been some interest in me talking about natural babies, how to take care of children and babies in a natural way using natural products. And I do hope to get to that soon. And also some interest in talking more about single girls at home, or young people at home, boys and girls, and just the question is, what should the procedure be? Are you risking a lot sending them out there to work, or is there a way to do this a different way in the family or at home or family-based? And I would be interested in talking about that sometime. I find it rather awkward sometimes, though. There are people who just don't understand it, and they push their... Now, my generation was pushed out into the world. It was the way everybody did it. The parents wanted their kids out working because it looked like their family was not a deadbeat family, you know, like everything was successful. But I think that this next generation, we're trying to teach them stay home because it's more profitable. You're going to use up everything you earn if you go away from home. And so I might spend a little time on that. If I do, I'll just do separate videos on that only for those who are interested in that. Single girls especially are concerned. And I've known of several boys who decided, Dad, I'm not going to go out there and get a job with a company. I want to work from home. And they have found ways to do it, including mechanics and computer repair, and people start, you know, there was an old saying, you remember this? Have a product worth, I don't know, something like that, and the world will beat a path to your door. Make a worthwhile product and the world will beat a path to your door. And found out that several of these young people, especially young men, have their work brought to them and are able to take care of things at home. And also they learn things like plumbing and electric, and like my descendants came in and put a floor in for me. I don't know where they must have watched their dad do it enough times that they came and put a floor in for me. Well, word gets around, and pretty soon somebody's asking them to come and do that for them, and they'll pay them. And the best thing to do, I think, is be faithful in little, and God will lead you to be faithful in much. So today I'm going to read from Tea with Jane Austen by Kim Wilson, and hopefully you're doing a few things while you listen here. Trying to see how much time I have left. And it had a chapter on tea away from home, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed that idea of the travelers, traveler's tea, but how hard it was for them to find a decent cup of tea. And isn't that true today when you're traveling? We've got all these nice places to stay, like the Sleep Inn, and all these places, and they're very high priced, but you really can't find a decent cup of tea. Isn't that sad? And wouldn't it be nice to have tea rooms around? And it told in here about how people's property would have a tea room on the property. Wouldn't that be fun? And that's why I stealth sip and have stealth tea, because I just pretend that there is a tea room around here somewhere, probably underneath a tree or in a little shady protected area. And I'll be showing you more of my stealth sipping. Unless there is a storm, I probably will continue to do it that way, or I may sneak around the house and do some stealth sipping. So this is called In Mrs. La Tournelle's Parlor. When Jane Austen was 10 years old, she and Cassandra, who was 12, spent a year and a half at the Reading Ladies Boarding School. At the Reading Ladies Boarding School. Horrible places, I think. I would never want to send my children to a boarding school. I think, that defies, the boarding school just kind of defies Deuteronomy 6 and Ephesians 6. And Deuteronomy 6 says, you shall teach your children as you walk, and as you talk, and as you sit in your house, and as you, what was it? I think it's like lay in your bed. So in other words, you can just hear people, like if you've ever seen the Waltons, and they're all gone to bed, but they're shouting at each other, saying good night, John, and good night, Ben, and good night, and and they talked. And of course, I grew up in a big family, and although we were in our separate little beds, we talked a lot at night, and parents too can do that. And it's just like every opportunity they need to hear their parents' voices, even if they're not saying any big scientific invention stuff. it says you shall teach your children and talk to them as you walk by the way, and as you sit in your house, and as you lay down. And when you send them away to a boarding school or anything like that where there's a big separation, you're not going to be able to do that. And in Ephesians 6:2, I'm fascinated with that because it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. And it didn't mention other authorities, but it was the parents that the focus is supposed to be on for young people. So I'll quit my lecturing now, and I will read. In Mrs. La Tournelle's parlor, when Jane Austen was 10 years old, see, I don't want to read this sentence. She and Cassandra, who was 12, spent a year and a half at the Reading Ladies' Boarding School. It was probably the inspiration for Mrs. Goddard's real, honest, old-fashioned boarding school, which Harriet Smith attends in Emma. Like Harriet, the Austen sisters held the special status of parlor boarder, for which Mr. Austen paid £35 a year for each girl, more than double what ordinary boarders were charged. Now, do you remember in one of the early 1995's Emma, and I don't think it was the Miramax version, it was the other one where Emma said she was a parlor boarder. She said Harriet was a parlor boarder, and I never could figure that out. So I did a little bit of looking around, and a parlor boarder was a girl or a boy who stayed at a boarding school, but they paid a higher price and got a room of their own, apparently. That's about all I could think of that I could find on it. So we're all parlor boarders. We all have our own place, our own room. So if I can just get my mind off of the idea of sending those girls away to a boarding school, I'll continue here. It just makes me sad. Parlor boarders ate their breakfast and dinner with the other girls in the schoolroom, but among other privileges, they took their tea and supper with the owner of the school, Mrs. La Tournelle. It's an interesting picture, the Austen girls and the other favored students cozily drinking tea in front of the fire in Mrs. La Tournelle's parlor, hung around with fancy work. You know, sometimes in the older movies, the older Jane Austen movies that were produced back in the 1940s and 50s, I would watch some of those and wonder what was going on with these students. These girls would be in a cozy, well-situated living room, looked a little bit wealthy, having tea with their with the teachers or with the owners of the school or something like that. I wonder what that situation was. But they paid a little more to do that. I guess they paid a lot more. While the less fortunate pupils were left to their apparently tea-less existence in the schoolroom. Oh, I know what it's like to be tea-less. And I try not to be without it. I've got it stocked and stashed in every room for one of these ice storms everyone's talking about. I've got tea stashed around here. And when I pass away, all the descendants will look and see. They'll say she really was paranoid. So with Mrs. La Tournelle, Jane and the other parlor boarders could imitate the elegance to which they were accustomed at home: graceful little tea tables, china cups and teapots, muffins, cake, dainty slices of bread and butter, and adult conversation. Though respectable and well-connected socially, Mrs. La Tournelle was not a particularly refined or educated woman. She must nonetheless have been fascinating to Jane, and she had a large fund of stories of equally mysterious origins about actors and the behind-the-scenes life of the theater that she was fond of sharing whenever she got the chance. That could be where Jane Austen got some of these scenes, like in Persuasion, of the circus characters. I like to picture 10-year-old Jane sitting attentively drinking in inspiration for her future writings along with her tea. So here is a quote from Jane Austen to her sister Cassandra. The letter which I have this moment received from you has diverted me beyond moderation. I could die of laughter at it, as they used to say at school. Two of Jane Austen's brothers, Frank and Charles, also went away to school, attending the Royal Naval Academy in Portsmouth in preparation for their future careers in the Navy. We know that Mr. Austen gave them an allowance liberal enough to enable them to drink tea. Isn't that amazing? And I've got boxes and boxes of it that I can't, I don't want to use it all because some of it I didn't like, and I just had a sip and I had to buy the whole box. That's so sad. Some places you can go and actually buy one bag of tea. But I think that he says that he gave them enough money to enable them to drink tea. I think that's interesting. Because, and somebody that we went to see that had a tea party, as we were leaving, she had a bowl of what I call orphan tea bags, like a little bit left over out of each box, and she'd put them all in this big bowl, and she said, please help yourself. And so everybody took a couple of bags. They were packaged tea, so that she got a chance to get rid of them all. I might do that sometime with just the ones that I have left that no one seemed interested in. A former schoolmate later wrote to Charles reminiscing about their daily evening tea party. This all sounds innocent and refined enough until we notice that the schoolmate underlined the phrase. Perhaps the teenage students of the academy were spiking their tea and adding a little liveliness to the evening. So I thought you might be interested in that, and as I find more things in it that have information that I like about tea, I'll be reading it to you. And today I'm also going to read to you out of Elizabeth, Princess Stepping Heavenward, a diary of a young lady, and one of the reasons I have a hard time getting through it is because she talks about the mistakes she makes and how she wants to improve, and I just feel it so keenly because I identify as 16. So it's painful to read it. February 24, and I believe this is, I'm trying to think what the year 1831. Okay. February 24, 1831. Mother spoke to me this morning for the 50th time, I really believe, about my disorderly habits. Oh yeah, we were just in such a hurry all the time, and we'd make big piles of stuff, and then when there was no time to clean it up or sort it properly, we just throw something over it like a sheet or something. I don't think I am careless because I like confusion. Yeah, that's me. But the trouble is I am always in a hurry and in a ferment about something. If I want anything, I want it very much right away. So, if I am looking for a book or a piece of music or a pattern, I tumble everything around and can't stop to put them to rights. I wish I were not so eager and impatient, but I mean to try to keep my room and my drawers in order to please Mother. You know, I think in her case, probably not in much of a hurry as I've seen in my generation. I tried not to rush my children so that when we got in from somewhere, they had time to put things away. When we were leaving somewhere, they didn't have to hurry and find something, and we tried to be more slow about everything and not be and being more careful about it, because what we're doing when we do that was we're saying what we're going to and what we're attending to is more important than being good stewards of our things. And it's very hard to get rid of that feeling of being, what was that I said last time I was here? Urgency and haste. My friend was telling me urgency and haste make us make the wrong decisions, make us make mistakes, and we get more muddled. She says, too, you know, that when she says, but I mean to keep my room and my drawers in order to please Mother, Do you remember that phrase, to please Mother? Do you remember in Wives and Daughters when Osborne said, I got into the habit of dressing for dinner to please Mother. She says, too, that I am growing careless about my hair and my dress. Boy, if you try to correct a young girl about that, she gets very offended. But that is because my mind is so full of more important things. I thought I ought to be wholly occupied to do my duty to God, but Mother says duty to God includes duty to one's neighbor, and that untidy hair pulled up in all sorts of rough bunches, rumpled cuffs and collars, and all that sort of thing makes one offensive to one's neighbors. I'm sorry she thinks so, for I find it very convenient to twist up my hair anyhow, and it takes a good deal of time to look after collars and cuffs. What an attitude. She had a sour attitude, didn't she? So here's March 14, and I wanted to read a sentence out of this because it reminded me of Emma. And remember, Emma said several times, what is the good of being almost 21 or almost 20 and still so much to be improved? Today I feel discouraged and disappointed. I thought that if God really loved me, and I really loved him, I should find myself growing better day by day. But I am not improved in the least. Most of the time I spend on my knees, I either feel stupid or nothing at all, or else my head is full of what I was doing before I began to pray, or what I am going to do as soon as I get through. I do not believe anybody else in the world is like me in this respect. Then, when I feel differently, and can make a nice glib prayer with floods of tears running down my cheeks, I get all puffed up and think how much pleased God must be to see me so fervent in spirit. I go downstairs in this frame and begin to scold Susan for misplacing my music, till all of a sudden I catch myself doing it and stop short, crestfallen and confounded. And, everybody has to watch this sort of thing, because I have been for a long time in the preacher's circle, in the preacher's families, and found out that sometimes they can get so busy trying to teach the Word of God that they forget themselves, and they don't realize they're developing a sour spirit, or they're becoming critical, or they're doing the very things that they're preaching about. And so now I want to go to something else you might like. I'm not sure I can stay here for as long as I usually do, but we will do something. I have been interested for a long time in the books of the old times that talked about, being successful in your life and how to do well in business. And I mentioned one that I had read years ago called Dress for Success by J.T. Malloy back in the 1980s, who was telling people that were starting to work at home that even if you're working at home, it was mainly to men, but I think there was part of it to women, that you still should get up and get dressed and act professional, because your voice will show it on the phone when you're talking to your clients. And so then I also had taken, or my husband had taken, I believe both of us took the Dale Carnegie course once, way back in the 1970s, and it was the first sort of success type techniques that we were taught way back when. But since then there have been others, and I've always been a little interested in them. Of course, they always have to line up to what the Bible says, and I'm always, for some reason, my mind always goes back to the report that the spies brought back from Canaan, and some of them said, there are giants in the land, and there's this and that, and there's all these problems, and that there were two of them that said, we can take the land because God said we could. And we all have to be careful of that attitude that things are set in stone, nothing can be done, we can't think things won't get better at home, we can't do better at home. But if I, who am vital, am able to change a few things, then you can too. And remember, one of the points of the story, of the account, it's not a story, it's actually a historical account of the spies. And their response was that God was not pleased with the ones that brought back a bad report, because he told them that he would let them take the land, and then they came back and said they couldn't because they were just looking at all the circumstances around them and not thinking that that they were told to do it. And so here's another problem with homemaking, is that we have to do certain things, but you can't look at it and say that will never get done, because we know that it's our duty to do it. And it's probably something we should teach little children too, before they develop a negative attitude to everything, is that even if you don't think it's going to turn out all right, or you don't think you can do it, the point is you need to start doing it, and you get credit for that. But let me read some titles. There have been other success type books, and I want to read some titles, and I just want to explain that it all has to line up with what the scriptures say. And I always remembered that in any account where someone brought back a bad report, God was not really pleased with them, and because it didn't show faith and gumption, and it's probably against our own nature, to be gloomy like that. We naturally want to live. We want life to improve. Okay, so I just want to read some the names of some chapters in this old book. I haven't read the book, but I've been in my library a while, and I thought maybe I'd just read the names of the chapter. And that is Failure is Not Permanent. And I hadn't really thought of it. I haven't read the chapter, but what a beautiful thing to think about. Failure is not permanent. And especially when you're a teenager, sometimes you can have some kind of mistake you made that just seems like, oh my goodness, it's going to ruin my future, going to ruin my life. But as you get older, the sting of it fades, and you realize that God had a purpose for it, and that it worked well for you, and that failure is not permanent. And you cannot let anyone go around saying that they're a failure in anything. Homemakers need to be careful about saying they didn't get anything done today, they're not, and they're a failure. Be very careful. We're not supposed to talk failure. Things that were supposed to be a big mistake might turn out good. There have been a couple times when I have changed something, or we have rebuilt something, or maybe made a permanent change in our house or our plans, and I was just so disappointed. But then we worked around it, and we made it a success. We made it work for us. And here's one: be prepared for things to happen outside of your plans. Yeah, we all make plans, and that we've got to, especially homemakers, you've got to know that as you go around doing your housekeeping and homemaking and teaching your children and nurturing everybody, that there will be things that aren't on your list that come up that you have to deal with, and you have to be flexible. Expect problems, and you'll be ready when they come. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Expect that if you've got this lovely list, and so far everything's going good, and you're putting your little check marks on, and then someone throws some kind of problem in it. I'm thinking particularly when I had this list and I was doing so well, and it began to rain outside, and I noticed there was a package sitting out there that had been delivered. And I didn't hear the truck come up, so I just let it sit out there. And then I had to go out and get it. And I had to get myself dried out. And I had to quickly open the package and make sure that nothing in it was damaged. And then I had to get rid of the packaging and the box and everything. And it just took so much time, and it wasn't on my list. So I just put it on my list. And then I put a check mark beside it. But it says here... be prepared. Expect problems, and you'll be ready when they come. That's interesting, isn't it? And then here's a good one. Separate yourself from complainers. Yeah, sometimes the complainers Moses was several times reprimanded the people that he was leading out of Egypt and into the promised land about their complaining. And apparently it was quite a big thing, because when someone is a complainer, it rubs off on somebody else. It's like a disease. It's just easy to catch it, easy to be complaining. And sometimes I think we who are doing okay get into complaining because we want to sympathize with those who are complaining. So we'll say, oh yeah, that happens to me sometimes too. And next thing you know, we're just all complaining. We don't want them to think we're doing too much better than they are. So we just get into sympathizing and doing the sympathy complaining. Okay, so now here's a good one. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the conquering of fear. Now, I believe there's a scripture that says, have courage and I will give you strength. And so sometimes we'll say, oh God, please give me the strength for whatever. And remember that you have to have courage. And courage is apparently, if you can look it up, that'd be your assignment to look that up. That'll be your homeschool assignment. Courage is it's like bravery, and it is having courage is meaning that you're stepping outside of the feeling of ease for a while, just to do something that you must do, even though you don't want to. And then they say in one of these chapters, be passionate about the things you want to do. It just means be enthusiastic and excited about what you want to do, and that isn't always possible with some of the things we have to do. But we think about the finished product. For instance, it's not exciting to me to have to make the beds. That's just not. It's hard work for me. Our rooms are small. The beds are hard to get around, and it's really hard to arrange the covers and stuff. But once I get past the fitted sheets and the pillowcases and things like that, then I can start putting on the icing, which is the bedspread and the toppings and toppers and the special pillows and things like that. So it's like planting a garden, you know. You dig in the dirt and you put the seeds in. You don't see very many results for a while, but if you didn't put the seeds in, you wouldn't get the pretty plants afterwards. Okay. And here's one. If you see big problems, look for big opportunities. Cultivate a sense of discovery. Yeah, that was the fun part, isn't it? I love that. I'm going to read that chapter. And later on, I'll let you know what the name of the book is. Cultivate a sense of discovery. Well, that's what homeschooling was all about, to give them a sense of discovery, and you too, and not act like you as the teacher knows it all, but you're learning along with them. And sometimes my children would bring me something and show it to me, and I'd say, I don't know what that is. Where'd you find that? Well, that's interesting. And then we would have a conversation about something, whether it was a rock or a rock with some glittery stuff in it or anything like that. We'd have a conversation, and I'd get real curious, and I'd say, I wonder what that stuff is. We'd try to find a book on it, and if we'd had the web in those days, we would have enjoyed it so much. If you think you can, try to think you can. And even if it fails, just keep hoping and being optimistic about everything. And don't let fear stop you. Don't take yourself too seriously. And sometimes you have to start all over. You know, that's true. Sometimes things will fail and you think you've wasted all that time. And I've done that with sewing. It's just so frustrating. And of course, now that I've got a brilliant granddaughter who knows how to sew without patterns, I'm probably not going to waste quite so much. Patterns are a problem because they don't all fit the same, and they're tested in a little different way. Oh, here's one. When your wardrobe malfunctions in front of 10,000 people, make it part of your act. And this man was talking about something went wrong with his tie or something. Don't get complacent. and don't set yourself up for a big mistake. And then he has some hints on how to de-stress and what to do when you're attacked for trying to do something different or change anything, and how give up. He says don't give up, but give up on complainers, and there was already one chapter on that. And be patient. You may have to wait 20 years for something to succeed. And that's the beauty of being of a vital age, is you can look at 20 years. I can remember being 20 years old, not being able to look at any 20-year success or 20-year to see how things pan out, But you can look at 20 years, and I look and I see. At first, when I was starting to homeschool, I had no clue where this was going to go. And then I was able to look back and see that, yes, we did do some things that helped, and we did do some things that were good and important. The world makes us doubt. The world tries to make us think that what we did was not worthwhile. And I can look back now on 20 years and think that although the world tried to erode that, anything that I tried to do, for instance, they will try to, people even in churches will try to tell your kids that they missed out on something because they didn't go to public school. And but then you can wait for a while, for a few years, and you'll notice that it all takes hold and it all comes to fruition. And if you did what was right, God will recognize it and recompense you for it. It says, be creative and be a positive thinker. Now, I don't know where that word positive thinking came from. But I always thought of the spies, that spied out the land for Joshua and said, we can take the land. The ones that said we could take the land, and the other ones that said, oh no, there are giants in the land. And there were, too. They're discovering that there were giants. But I always thought about that. Start with a creative, positive thinking. I love creativity. I love to think of different ways to do things. I've got a little grandson that can do amazing things with paper. And all he needs for Christmas is a box with lots of tape and pens and paper and anything else, just anything he wants. And he can build, he can make railways, he can do anything. And of course, this book also had a chapter on where something else, where there's a need, find a need and fill it. That was what that phrase was. Find a need and fill it, and the world will be the path to your door. And I don't think it means that, we as homemakers, we want to inspire our children, and but we don't want to put all the success of the world that they could have in front of the success of the home. And if I were to talk to my little descendants, I would say to them, all you have to do is be a good person, get married and have children, and God will provide the work. God will provide the profession so you can earn a living. But too often, I think even in homeschooling, we tell people, we're training them so they can get jobs. What good is it to get jobs if they can't hang on to their lives and their families? So train everybody, just what I'm trying to do. Be a good person and have a good family life and a home life. And don't try to, don't demean yourself because you're, quote, not smart or don't have particular types of skills or a huge income. Be a good family person, family man, family woman, and even tell your children to be like that. Love one another, and then God will provide your provision and provide a way. And I've already seen that come to fruition by looking back 20 years when people were saying, oh, your daughter will never get married, your sons will never get a job, and they all did far and away above those who were discussing it and being negative. So just be a good person, especially be honoring at home and in your home life, and God will, He will honor that. So let me see how long I have been here. Long enough to bore you, I hope. So I also would like to maybe discuss the story of Ruth the next time I come back here, on how she was a young widowed woman, and how word got around that she was with her mother-in-law, and how well she had treated her mother-in-law, who was also a widow. And kind of discuss that in light of single women at home, or maybe not at home, and draw out some of the principles in that story that might be very helpful. Now, ladies, let's see if I covered everything I brought here. Yes, I read all the stories I wanted to read to you today, and I hope you did get a few things done, and hopefully I will talk about something a little more interesting next time. And so until I come back, I love you. Thank you for all you do for me. Thank you for your comments. They give me a lot of food for thought, for things to talk about. And thank you for all the care you give for me. And so until I come back, stay close to Christ. Bye.